Good afternoon. Love the way that just quiets everyone down. This afternoon, I'm excited to welcome Pascale Duguay to the lecture theater. Pascale is a senior managing consultant at IBM, and she has extensive experience in leading and managing complex innovation programs. And today, you're going to learn about what a large-scale, flexible capacity data science program is. I don't know what that is. I'm looking forward to hearing what she has to say about digital innovation today. Please join me in welcoming Pascale Duguay to Connect.
Hi everyone, my name is Pascale Duguay and I'm a senior managing consultant with IBM, and I'm here today because I've been living and breathing large-scale transformation in the public sector for as long as I can remember. And what I want to talk to you guys about today is how to manage digital reinvention at the speed of a startup, but at the scale of an enterprise. I'm going to try and keep this fairly light, just because I'm very aware that you guys have been doing this for 2 days now, and I can't even imagine how much information you guys have consumed. So we'll just go through the foundations of this and keep it fairly simple. So there are growing pressures for transformation, both organizations in the public sector and in the private sector are sensing the urgency to really capitalize now more than ever on new technology, methods, processes, continuously gathering input from their clients in order to maintain or increase market profitability, but more importantly, especially in the public sector, is stay relevant in their respective industries. And if that's not complex enough, we're looking to do it in a way that allows us to accelerate time to value and perpetually reinvent. Easy enough? And to add to that, the pressures and drivers for transformation are very varied. So we're looking at a range from embedding agile practices to quantum computing. So as an example, a growing trend are agriculture organizations or enterprises that are leveraging predictive analytics capabilities and getting really creative about the way they farm in order to use less land to produce more crops and increase productivity. At the other end of the spectrum, we have public sector organizations that are drastically changing the way they interact with Canadian citizens, providing a more user-centric customer experience and facilitating access to services. So what's happening as well is that these changes aren't happening in isolation. They're all happening at the same time, which further drives the need for continuous innovation and simultaneous drastic culture shifts. What we're noticing, however, is a first step in terms of transformation or at tackling this trend has been to adapt a more agile mindset, or to start tackling everything in terms of sprints or proof of concepts, which is really a step in the right direction. What we're noticing, however, is that most sprints or proof of concepts never actually make it to production. So essentially, there's a culture of innovation tourism where we're willing to invest in exploration, but we're not really ready to commit to a more integrated solution at a broader scale. So what that tells us is that organizations are here to visit, but not necessarily to stay when it comes to innovation. So think about the emotional, physical, psychological investment you make when you book a trip to Florida versus if you were ready to move to Florida. That's kind of the concept that we're covering here. Some of the challenges in terms of bringing a proof of concept or just transformation in general, especially in the public sector, are really around the rigidity of the administrative processes. I love when people laugh. The, dare I say, obsession with perfection and the difficulty in promoting a fail-forward mindset. A historical culture of organizational silos, and most importantly, difficulty in retaining and sometimes attracting top talent. I'm seeing a lot of head nodding and laughing, so that's a good sign. So the issue isn't so much identifying the need for transformation, it's identifying a way to deliver on it, especially when it comes to more innovative, groundbreaking type of transformation. So IBM's new engagement model, the IBM Garage, really addresses the need for an approach and a framework that allows you to proactively plan for transformation while constantly managing iterative projects, delivering incremental value, and contributing to a broader objective. The IBM Garage is an innovation platform that integrates and provides access to the right people, new and advanced technologies, enterprise ways of working, and for locations around anywhere around the world. And when we talk about garage, when we use the word garage, the term, or the essence of the term, really reflects the early beginnings of most very successful companies now that quite literally started in a garage, where there was co-location, co-creation at a rapid scale at the startup level that then grew at the enterprise level. So think of that as we're going through this presentation. And I'm sure you'll also draw a lot of really great parallels with the Dev Exchange if you're familiar with it. So how does this all work? The method, the IBM Garage Method, proposes an iterative approach to ideation, project management, and delivery, where you constantly think, transform, and thrive in a continuous loop. And then this method is supported by a set of practices that allow for continuous innovation and also simultaneously embed new ways of working within your organization, drastically changing the culture of organization and really setting the foundations that you need for large-scale transformation. You'll notice that the culture component is at the center of the method and is extremely large, mostly because a lot of the challenges that we encounter in terms of innovation, transformation, is never really about the technology, the infrastructure, the capability. It's really around the people and the habits that have got us here that aren't necessarily wrong, but are just so deeply rooted into how we've done things in the past. So I'm going to take a little break from what I like to call buzzword bingo and break this down a little bit further. So like I said, iterative approach where you think, transform, and thrive in a continuous loop. So you start in the think phase, where here you have a definite objective and a broad objective that you're trying to accomplish. Within your think phase, you're going to establish a list of growth areas, opportunities, problem statements, which are going to lead to a series of, or one, proof of concept that you're trying to prove. So from this phase, you'll have proof of concepts, a journey map in terms of how you're going to get there, some hypotheses for your next phase, and a pretty good view in terms of what your journey looks like. When you move into the transform phase, this is when your proof of concept really goes towards a minimal viable product. So here is when you're starting to release some of the capabilities that you're trying to establish to your target demographic, whether it be within your own organization or to a customer, outside of your organization. When you move into the thrive phase, this is when you're really scaling all of your minimal viable product. So this is when you'll have, really resilient and scalable applications integrated into your business infrastructure, probably adapted and really understood new ways of working, and kind of that ecosystem where you're really looking at transforming to the next step. You'll notice there's a couple of methods that are mentioned here, which I think most of you are really familiar with. So things like enterprise design thinking, agile and distributed agile, talent and change, of course, and some of the DevOps. So the different phases kind of encompass these practices as well. And if this sounds a little bit foreign or a little bit intimidating, the approach is supported by assets and accelerators that really help you have the right access to the right people with the right skills, the new technology, emerging technology, ways of working, and also a network of people that you can connect with and develop partnerships. So essentially, you can collaborate and co-create based on your needs with designers, data scientists, architects, our generic consultants, while also prototyping and playing around with AI, robotics process automation, VR, quantum computing if that's your need. And also practicing with enterprise ways of working that have been proven to be successful, like design thinking, DevOps, agile, etc., while also, accessing a broader network. So I want to do a walkthrough example to demonstrate kind of the progression of the think, transform, and thrive. So you'll remember that we had it in 3 phases, but what's important to remember is that not all of your small initiatives are going to be at the same place at the same time. So you're essentially orchestrating and coordinating a series of miniature projects that are all evolving towards a broader objective. Before I jump into a more technology-based example, the way that I look at it sometimes in day-to-day life would be, okay, for example, I'm moving right now, so it's gotten me thinking about, if I were to build a home from scratch, how would I go about doing that? If the end goal is providing a home or somewhere for your friends and family, you're going to start with your fundamentals that define what a home is. You're going to start with your 4 walls, maybe some plumbing, maybe some electricity, probably a foundation. I should have started with that, and a roof. As you start to release that or make that available to people to live in this house, that project or that initiative is going to transform into something else. All of a sudden, you're coordinating a kitchen renovation, a bathroom renovation, some interior design in there, some paint. You're not at the decorative part yet, but you're leveraging a bunch of different skill sets in different parts of your home, but all contributing and marching towards the same objective. So when I think about the IBM Garage or most agile, iterative, large-scale transformation programs, that's kind of the parallel that I'm drawing. It's just a series of activities that you're coordinating, iterating on because you're gathering client input throughout the entire thing, and all contributing to a broader objective. So one example I like to talk about is robotics process automation. So in the room, is everyone pretty familiar with RPA? So yay or nay? Yay. Okay, so a lot of yays, a couple of nays. But essentially, robotics process automation is the new trend in terms of emerging technologies. And it's really kind of an easy fix when you have a lot of legacy systems or you want to automate a lot of simple tasks. So if you have, people hands to keyboard all the time and you just want to replicate that with a computer, that's what robotics process automation does. So if you wanted to have, let's say you have an initiative to automate and enhance the customer experience for a client contact center, you could embed robotics process automation capabilities. So essentially your proof of concept, your first step, would be testing out the RPA technology. You'd pick one process and demonstrate that your infrastructure can support it, you have the tools, it works, it applies to your processes, and you can get people on board. That's the first step. In your think phase, you'll have established probably a list of things that you can accomplish. So your proof of concept will evolve into a minimal viable product where you'll grow into maybe multiple processes, or maybe you'll expand on your proof of concept to include different capabilities, different parts of the process. Maybe there's areas that you neglected because they weren't so critical. And then you'll start to release those into the client contact center, or if they're client-facing at all. Maybe when this moves and progresses a little bit later, you'll start to leverage and integrate with different technologies. Maybe there's a CRM that you want to interact with. Maybe you want to add on a virtual agent where your customers can interact with the virtual agent, and then your robotics process automation will take the inputs from your customers, input them in your database, and feed back answers. So that's one evolution. Then you can move on to more advanced capabilities where maybe the robot is in parallel working with AI, and you can have an analytics model that's interpreting and correcting some of the transactions of the robot, and also gathering insights in terms of customer feedback or response rates. So essentially, the ultimate goal was really to transform your client contact center and provide a better customer experience. But you didn't do it right away. You did it incrementally while gathering feedback in manageable chunks, but all progressing in the right direction. And not only that, you're delivering value incrementally, which allows you to fund your previous programs. So the payback and the return on investment, you're getting incrementally. So the funding need is a lot less large. Does that make sense? Did I make that more complicated? Okay. So instead of walking through these examples, I'm going to demonstrate a couple of use cases where this has been used and what has been the outcome. And I'm going to let kind of this video give me a break a little bit from speaking.
Cemex have been in business for 113 years. We know how to make cement, we know how to produce cement, we know how to sell it, how to deliver it. We didn't know that much about technologies.
The origin of the IBM Garage was to help people figure out how to interact with technology and build things that they didn't know they could have.
The early stages of Cemex Go seemed like an impossible task to do. We needed to transform analog transactions, analog interactions for thousands of customers in a very short period of time.
One of the number one issues of the industry of construction is schedule. If you don't get your cement on time on a construction, you may have 200, 300, 400 people waiting.
We know when the trucks leave the plant, when they arrive, when they deliver, when they come back. We thought that the minimum viable product that we should start with was one that can enable our customers to do a full transaction.
You start piloting things that they're not going to work, move on. The things that they're going to work, expand.
I think that we are transforming everything. At the beginning inside, that we have discovered that the way to work in new technologies is completely different. We have introduced not only new techniques, like the design thinking, agile, and many other different things, but also it's mean that we need to change the mentality internally of the company.
The adoption levels started quite low, but then it picked up at a rhythm that we couldn't even imagine. And at the end, we kind of underestimated the appetite from our customers to transact digitally with us.
It is very gratifying in different ways. When you talk to customers, they relate to how the business has changed for them because of this digital platform.
The timeliness of the response is actually faster than if we had to make a phone call and talk to the dispatcher.
De los principales beneficios que veo con la plataforma de Cemex Go ha sido principalmente esta comunicación constante y el control que me da el manejo de la cuenta de una manera más rápida, el levantar pedidos en cuestión de minutos, el aplicar los pagos de forma directa.
They do the real-time pour tracking is amazing. I mean, that's something that's very unique to CMEX.
We do sell, we deliver our construction material products, but our customers do buy much more things, and they do need much more services. So now we are much better prepared in order to have a more meaningful transformation.
I think the whole CEMEX Go experience has, beyond just the platform itself, has helped build a new culture. It's what the real transformation is, I think. We have been able to build the muscle to continue evolving our own platforms in the future.
When I see what other competitors are doing, and when I see what we have done, it feels good too.
So I like this example because they're coming from, cement manufacturing. You don't necessarily think bleeding edge in terms of emerging technology. And not that that has to be the case for every garage, but it's interesting to see a drastic culture shift like that. Another example I wanted to talk through was the province of Nova Scotia garage, where they actually have one currently in place. And they're currently operating with 10 to 15 team members, depending on capacity, running about 8 high-impact, high-return projects in parallel at a time. So the use cases that are coming out of the garage are very varied, but very much based in terms of more efficiently leveraging technology and improving access to public services to Canadians. One example coming out of the province of Nova Scotia garage has been a web app that allows you to geolocate the nearest defibrillator within 300 meters. So if you're going into cardiac arrest, you can actually use the web app to locate, but not only to the nearest building, it'll actually tell you where it is in the building, so you don't waste any time. What used to happen is you would make a phone call, 911, and the response rate was around 11 minutes. They've reduced the response rate in terms of by 3 minutes, increasing the survival rate by 10%. And this is because while you're waiting for a paramedic or assistance, you can actually use the defibrillator on yourself as needed. That was the initial proof of concept, where the main thread is, where can I locate the nearest defibrillator? The next phase was, let's include an alarm that goes off on your phone so that when you do use the defibrillator that you're near, paramedics can find you because there's an alarm that's going off and they can enter a building and hear the alarm. Another step has been, and as we move through the POC, minimal viable product stage, another one and another release was starting to gather information in terms of the battery levels of the defibrillators. So now they can conduct more proactive maintenance in terms of these machines and the defibrillators, so that they have constant information on that. So our experiences are pretty varied with the IBM Garage. There's been some for American Airlines, there's been some for banks, and the range of projects are very varied. So what this tells us is that it's a framework, it's a method that allows you to do large-scale transformation in an iterative fashion. It's not tied to a specific product, it's not tied to a specific technology, it's simply to facilitate and embed innovation. This hasn't come without challenges, as you can imagine. And like I mentioned earlier, the challenges in transformation are very rarely around the technology. They're usually around that culture component in terms of people, in terms of habits, in terms of values. So what I wanted to do today was identify and start to share some of our battle wounds, and so that you guys can avoid some of the speed bumps that we've hit along the way. The most important one is get everyone on board. When you're doing a garage mindset or a garage concept, you're getting everyone in a team at the table. So that means that this isn't executive messaging, top down. This is bottom up, top down. Everyone that is on your team is aligned to the same task, working in an agile, iterative, rapid fashion. The second one, align to ambitious objectives. Like I mentioned earlier, is even though you are parsing out your work and incrementally driving value, you need to look at and constantly remind yourself of the why and the business objective that you're trying to achieve. Which brings me to the next two, plan for production and scale. When you're doing each of these individual projects, not only do you need buy-in and not only do you need a broader objective, it needs to be sustainable from a long-term perspective. Yes, you are doing a proof of concept, and yes, you want it to allow for exploration, but you also need to think about the bigger picture. Put the govern in government is interesting because you need to find the right balance between having a framework and a method that doesn't hinder innovation, but also allows you to measure performance and value and also reward good behavior, quote unquote, good behavior. Because in order to drive back to those objectives, there's gonna need to be some kind of measurement of sorts. But the governance that you put in place has to allow for that flexible capacity and that iteration. And that's the sweet spot that's typically very difficult to find in the government, and where you have to really cater the garage approach to whatever the needs or the capacity is. Coordinate initiatives. When we were looking at that picture with the building blocks of POCs moving to MVPs, et cetera, the impact of the projects don't happen in isolation. You get a lot of value from the individual initiatives that you're driving because they're helping to fund the entire program essentially. But you're also getting a lot of value from the coordination amongst each and what you can leverage as kind of the foundation for all of your initiatives. And finally, enable talent. These transformation projects, depending on the type of technology that you're using or the method, require really specific skill sets or sometimes really unique personality. And so you need to enable your talent either by training them, partnering with vendors, or hiring to all work towards that transformation together. So those are really kind of the lessons learned of some of the IBM Garage transformations that we've done. If I could summarize this presentation and kind of the cliff notes and the 5 points, I'd say, innovation and transformation is imminent. All of these changes are happening at the same time. There needs to be mechanisms in place where you can perpetually reinvent yourselves, but also incrementally deliver value. While you're doing that, keep in mind the broader objective and make sure that when it comes to innovation, you're here to stay. So if you need to disrupt, if you need to innovate, if you need new ways of working, the Garage Method might be a great approach for you guys. I'm going to open it up in terms of questions. I know I kind of sped through some of that content, and I have a couple colleagues in the room as well if I'm unable to answer some of your questions. I think there's people running mics, so.
Hi, thanks for the presentation. Just wondering, the garage is focused on technology, but you've talked a lot about people and changing people. So how does the garage leverage, what do you leverage to change the people aspect? How do you integrate that? Is it purely technologically focused, or are there experts within the garage to deal with the people changing part?
So that's a great question, and sometimes when we use the word platform, it leads to confusion in terms of what a garage actually is. So the garage is more a method and a framework, and it's agnostic of technology. So whatever your problem statement is, or whatever your broader business objective is, you're going to bring in the technology that you need to address that problem. In terms of the people and cultural change, it's in two parts. The first part is starting to use and embed different ways of working. So having people that understand design thinking and agile as part of your garage is really important in terms of transformation. And then the second component is that regardless of what the project is, you're still going to need some of those core elements in terms of, organizational change management and training and communication. Those are still part of the building blocks and part of changing the culture and the people. Does that answer your question? Okay. That was too easy.
I'll ask a question.
Okay.
What's the difference between regular automation and robotics business automation?
When you say regular automation, what do you mean?
Like, I work on a agile team, we've automated things, but we've never called it robotics automation, so.
Okay, so I'm not sure if I'll answer your question properly. Keep in mind, I'm not a technology focused person, but essentially robotics process automation, RPA, is a specific technology. So it's more of an add-on into your existing infrastructure and architecture that's creating a link between let's say two softwares. So one example that we do is, let's say you're taking information or numbers from an Excel spreadsheet and putting them into a CRM. Or let's say there's a form that needs to be filled out based on specific fields in a CRM, or really any command that involves someone typing it, but the information can come from somewhere else. The robot is able to take that information and key it in for you. So when you watch like an RPA technology work, you'll actually see it key in everything that you've programmed it to do, but just at a rapid pace. So with RPA, you actually do need a digital workforce to do the work for you. So not only do you have your current team, but you have like a team of computers and robots that do all of the transaction processing. It's very cool when you watch a live demo of robotics process automation. We've done it in rooms where the output is a paper that's printed and you haven't touched anything. It's pretty fascinating.
Hi, Pascale.
Hi.
A question around the Nova Scotia example.
Yes.
For virtual staffing.
Yes.
Presume that's still following kind of an agile methodology. How did they make that work for product owner dedicated teams? Can you describe that a little bit for us?
Sure.
Thanks.
So we kind of adapt the same kinds of practices at IBM, so I'm going to draw parallels between the two. So in terms of having so collaboration can be defined in different ways, and we like to use every tool at our disposal in order to collaborate more effectively. And you do get a lot of high impact from being co-located in the same space. There's definitely no denying that. IBM has gone full remote to full collaboration. The pendulum has swung so many times that we've landed a little bit in the middle, where I do think you still need that face time. But then when you can't get that face time, you need the tools that accelerate collaboration. So we use video conferencing a lot. On some calls, it's mandatory, actually. We use a tool called Mural, which is kind of design thinking on a desktop, where you can write a lot of stickies and post them, and everybody can access the same board. We've started using Trello from a project management perspective, so you can kind of, plan your sprints that way. And we also use Slack a lot. So for example, when we mentioned that I'm managing currently a flexible data science capacity program, what we've done is we have like one program, I think it's a channel, environment or something, and then we have channels for each of our projects. So when people want to collaborate on a specific project, they go in that hashtag, talk to each other. So you need to equip your team to collaborate virtually if you want to have a virtual workforce. Welcome. Any more questions?
Hi there. In the Nova Scotia example, I think you said you had, depending on the projects, I think they had 12 to 18 people.
Yeah.
And did you say that they were working on 8 projects now?
Yeah.
Could those projects so are they all sort of from one program area, or are they totally unrelated, or could be from different ministries even?
So there's about 10 to 15 people at a time working on 8 projects at a time. I'm not embedded in that team, but typically they'll leverage different expertise as needed, so on a flexible capacity kind of perspective. And then within those eight, it's not their 8 individual projects, but they could be contributing to 2 or 3 larger programs within the 8. So they're not like 8 defib kind of projects. Okay. Well, if there's no more questions, I'll be in the room to answer some if you just don't want to stand up at a microphone, which is completely understandable. And we left some contact information if anybody wants to, get more informed of a garage, get a virtual tour of a garage as well, because we do that. Feel free to reach out.